There's an old saying from Jack Warner in the 20s when they were cranking out, literally cranking out a whole lot of films, and it was just in a big pipeline out through the whole system that they were setting up, Warner Brothers there. And some director person said to Jack, I need a little more time here. We've got some great things. We're going to make it so much better. And Jack's response, I don't want it better. I want it Tuesday. So if you're of that mind, then we're not here. See you later. We're not here. There's an old saying from Da Vinci that says, great art is never finished. It's only abandoned. So after 20 years of working on Mona Lisa, he abandoned it.
Didn't George Lucas say that too?
So
20 years later, he made it.
No.
There's another
We've been waiting for you to arrive.
That restaurant's never finished, just taken away from them.
Yes.
Good things happening for a lot.
Old directors never die, they just are left on the cutting room floor. So,
I thought they faded out.
oh, that's true. They just faded out after the credits roll. Let's start with an opening prayer. Do we have a volunteer?
Our dear Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity we get to meet together as a group creatives. We are thankful for this beautiful state and country in which we live. We ask that you please bless those who are doing so much to preserve its peace and that it may be protected. Please guide and direct us at this time in our efforts to become better at what we do and help us to do so in accordance with thy will. We pray for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Doug, can I get the mouse and can you turn that this direction and can I scoot this direction a little bit?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let me start while we're repositioning all this with this statement. I had sent an email 2 weeks ago, whatever, saying that, we're going to hear from you 2 weeks from the day. And we do want others to speak up and express their thoughts.
You can have this.
I already have it.
No, I mean for a minute.
Yes.
Did you want to do a quick
Intro.
report around before you start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Let's do that. In fact,
I can start.
Yeah, let's start.
Okay. When I was growing up in the church, back when we had priesthood and Sunday school, and then come home and come back for sacrament meeting. And in Sunday school, we used to have what we call 2.5-minute talks. I'm going to stay under 2.5 minutes. But anyway, Robert and I got some really good news this time. We've been working for some time developing a children's satellite TV channel with children and family programming in the Farsi language for Iran and Afghanistan. It's called Tuka TV. And we had a meeting a few weeks ago with the people at BYU TV to see if there might be some type of benefit from some joint efforts there with regards to Tuka TV. And they liked the idea, but they said that they would not really be able to proceed unless they got confirmation, green light from on high, basically, to do so. So this morning I got an email from Elder Anthony Perkins, who is the president of the Middle East, North Africa area. And he said that after we had a couple of weeks, last week, one week ago today, we had a Zoom meeting with him and basically said that go ahead and talk to BYU. We're not going to tell them to help you, but if it makes sense to them, you have our blessing. So we are pretty excited. With regards to, number one, licensing their content, they got a lot of original programs that they produce. And number two, operational support.
So in doing all of that,
That's 2.5 minutes?
We will need some other people helping out production-wise because there will be a whole lot of translations and editing and such to line it all up.
Well, it just so happens that my company does tons of post-production for languages for the LDS Motion Picture Studio.
Well, there's a natural to follow, and that's one of the reasons we have this get-together like this. Does anyone else have some 2.5 minutes talks?
Or just introduce people.
Yeah.
Just,
Just go around and introduce
Yep.
each other.
Nick Mills, for those that haven't met me yet.
I don't recognize you. I still don't recognize you. Now I recognize
Me without a mask. I was going to shave, but I decided not to because I was going to be wearing a mask.
Brandon Ho, exciting news. I expanded my koi pond and all the stuff that I put in there for filtration all worked through. I've got crystal clear water with very happy fish. And I also just realized that bank robberies won't work anymore because everybody will recognize anybody wearing a mask because that's who we are now in the year 2020.
Who is that masked man?
I know that man anywhere. Brandon Ho, he's been to all of our meetings.
Tom Taylor.
Tom, good to have you here.
yes.
We are glad you're able to join us here. And feel free to suggest or participate by all means.
Well, I'm Kels Goodman. I run the LDS Film Festival, but I also try to make a film once in a while. And I actually got a script that I brought today
Good.
for anybody who wants to read. I printed 3 copies, or if you want a digital, I'm a print guy. I like to have it in my hands. But it's a fun script. It's actually, I don't know when to talk about it when in this meeting. I don't want to, rule the meeting with my story, but I've written it several years ago, and between me and Sharon, I don't know if anybody knows Sharon.
I love Sharon.
Yeah, we rewrote it together, and then Scott Christopher came in on it, and we kind of wrote it, and it's a comedy with Scott Christopher in it, and it allows a lot of, I really believe there's a lot of on-camera talent here in Utah that, and I've worked with a lot of comedians and people who are just really good with improv, and I have to constantly limit them when it comes to shooting something. They have to have the limit. But in this film, I'm allowing them to have to let them go a little bit. And it's a comedy called The Making of the Making of. So you already see where it's going. So,
Funny.
and it's Scott Christopher would play a director of behind the scenes films. And so it's kind of think Galaxy Quest, and it's kind of and it's about this company that's making a sequel to a bad 80s sci-fi movie. And the only one excited is Scott Christopher, and so you can kind of see where that's going, and it is hilarious.
They will have to have some couch scenes, where the actors sit behind, they're like, well,
Yeah, and the thing is, Scott and I have a synergy, and I've done several.
Y2K.
Scott, yeah, Y2K. Yeah, we did that, and then but in recent years we've done several commercial spots and some other comedy spots that we just have the synergy where he just kind of screws everything up, and it's kind of fun, and it's a fun movie. But what's great about it is there's a sci-fi element to it without the sci-fi dollars, because it's them making a bad sci-fi sequel. And so it doesn't have to look beautiful, it doesn't have to look perfect. It's just the people behind the scenes have to be really funny. And so anyway, so to me, it's a great next step for me to wanting to get the film made. I wrote it as if I were paying for the film, but I figured I may not want to commit that suicide. I could put some money into it, but I'll be looking for some other people to help me fund it. And I do, because of the sci-fi aspect of it, I am looking at it as a business venture. But I do want eyes to read the script to help me story-wise to go in the right direction. But we've been toying with it, and Scott and I have been like, when are we going to do it before we get too old? When are we going to do it? And so finally we're like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just get on with it. And so I'm trying to not make it out of my pocket. I'm trying to bring some other people in so we can raise the quality of the few effects that are in it and things like that. And it's perfect to be shot right here in the studio because it's a studio movie. It's all about them making a movie in a studio. And so, anyway, so that's what I'm coming with. And, that's me.
I can get it, Doug.
So whenever I hand a script to someone, I hand it to them and I say, here's the script, don't read it. Don't read it. And they say, well, what's wrong? What am I going to do? I say, you cannot read a script. It's not meant to be read. A novel's meant to be read. A script is a blueprint. So you must watch this script. Here, watch this script.
Yeah, feel it.
Watch
I can
this.
see that. Yeah, I can totally see that. So
Feel my script.
So whoever wants a hard copy, I'll give you the hard copy before I leave, and then if you want it electronic, I'll email it to you. I already have it online.
Yeah, send it to me, I'd love to.
You want an electronic copy?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I just think it's a fun break into more mainstream, but it's a very clean film, and it's fun, and like I said, it has a sci-fi edge to it, and it's hilarious. And I think it would be a nice, and it's mockumentary-ish. That's I should probably, you'll note that once you start reading it, you go, oh, okay, I see this is mockumentary. So, but anyway, that's
Very good. It's
yeah,
very
thank you very much. So, and who are you, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I want to know all about you.
Yes,
So,
well, you'll find it's never boring.
that's for sure.
Yeah, no, we're pressing forward on our event for February. I do like the universe and everything for creatives. And we're anticipating doing kind of a hybrid event because we're not sure how things will go with large groups. But the good news this week was we secured a special guest, Paul Levine, who's formerly with Warner's and is now been an agent for a number of years, and he's very excited. He says, I'm anxious to come to Utah because then he can pretend to be a Gentile as a Jew.
I was going to ask if he'd been to Utah before.
I think so.
Another-
He said he had been once, but it's been a long time. So anyway, I'm very excited about that because we want to make sure, like I said, our event is tailored for journeyman creatives who want to move up, and they need to understand the business process and so on. And I wanted to have someone who really got their hands dirty, and certainly working at Warner's, that was an opportunity to learn all the ins and outs. So I look forward to having you.
Good. Very good.
Kudos.
I'm Garrett, and we are just excited to continue moving forward on this shoot in Texas. We secured a location and we got dates.
Sweet.
On the 13th and 17th, so now we're casting and crewing out there.
Is it the Chosen, or is it a different set?
This is The Chosen.
You did get that. Oh, good.
Wow.
I know you were kind of concerned it wasn't going to happen. So.
Yeah, well, we went out there and talked to them, and everything all fell into place so far, so we'll, got a month for everything to fall apart.
Yeah.
So you said July? You said July?
This is, July 13th.
Okay.
We'll be out there. for
Right in the middle
a
of
week.
Texas, right in the middle of summer. So.
Yeah, we try to pick a hot place, but,
I could have picked July.
Hell is
So is this
frozen
in
over
lieu
now,
of
so-
the Romanian locations you were looking at, or?
well, that's a different movie,
Oh, a
and
different.
those are still on for
Okay.
August. Yes.
So which movie is this one?
This is the Carpenter. I sent a script around
Oh, okay.
last week.
All right.
And so we'll be shooting some key scenes from the Carpenter out there that week.
Good work.
I'm still
Yes, Doug.
I'm still working here. Just working on this, working with Doug here, trying to get projects in here. We got BYU coming in today to set up a set for Studio C shoot today and tomorrow.
Are you doing quite a bit of Studio C stuff here? or-
Well, this will be the first time in Studio C, but we did do a comedy feature with JK Studios. That's a break off from Studio C.
Oh, yeah, it's the same guys from the first seat.
From the first Studio C, yeah. So this group's just the new actors that BYU's got. So we're excited to have them in here and kind of try to create a relationship with BYU. Yeah.
I'm concerned that you don't have a Studio A or B. So where are you going to do this?
Yeah, we actually have a Studio C upstairs.
Is it the men's room?
I got
Is
it.
that the-
Yeah, we'll put them on stage A, actually.
No, you can't do that. You have to rename stage A to C.
Oh,
They got a brand going, you can't make that.
That's right. That's right.
it's the Visionary stage.
Studio SEE. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, and then I'm just, my script is in the stage of just research, and then I'll be looking forward to Brandon's outline presentation, so I can take it from research to outline.
And then you can edit.
Gotta shoot it first.
You'll edit the script.
Well, edit the script, yeah. Well, I gotta write the script before I can edit it. So that's where I'm at.
One question about the studio. Have you done any more consideration about renaming the studio?
Oh, well, we do, Doug wants to present a name for our film division, but I'll let him do that. We do have a name for the film division. So we'll be putting a new name up on the building, which will be the film division. So I don't know if the studio, I mean, it will have a name. We're gonna come up with a name for our film division, and that will probably become our studio name. So, Infomercials Inc. is gonna be, we'll still do our commercials on the side to keep, the doors open, but, we'll
You don't think anyone's gonna flock to your features off of infomercials?
No, it's not gonna happen. No, it's not gonna happen.
Good. Brian, introduce yourself.
I think I'll remove my mask if that's okay, just so you...
Well, you look much more
I'm a new
distinguished
face.
without it.
I've grown my beard back. I was asked to remove it when I was given a calling to serve as a baptistry coordinator at the temple. And given the hiatus right now, I was able to throw it back again. So
That means you're a real filmmaker.
That's right.
Filmmakers have to have a beard.
So, quick little bit about me. The two Roberts, I went to school with this one, but I was the student, he was the teacher at BYU. And I met Robert way back when I was a youngster, when Alma was in its beginning stages, and was part of that. And we were talking a little bit about the film festival that we did as well back then.
Dance festival.
Yeah, the dance festival we had back then. But I'm originally from Los Angeles and grew up behind the camera. My dad had a broadcast rental facility and stage and editing facilities, and then so I managed and worked a lot of that gear. And then I went off and had my own production company in LA, and then my wife and I decided we wanted to escape from LA. We moved to Washington, and where I met up with my father again, and we just ran a offshoot of his business, which was involved in, he developed some high-speed video equipment when it wasn't done on chips like we have today.
He was a pioneer in that area, wasn't he?
Wow. Yeah, his name was Ken Taylor, and he was a pioneer. He created quite a bit of stuff, but because of the equipment he had, he was able to capture license plates of vehicles moving along the highway, and we got involved with the Department of Transportation and started doing studies. So I left the Hollywood scene and went into more of a unique, niche side of the business, and there's not too many directors that can say I've directed over 100 cameras in a live shoot before. That was an accomplishment, but unfortunately none of the people knew they were the actors in the film.
But you did say action.
We did. So anyway, then I got involved in doing a comedy club in California, and then moved off out here to Utah, back to the old stomping grounds, which my wife and I said we'd never return back to Utah, but we did. And anyway, I'm currently the media director for a day trading company, and as I say, I have a huge department there. I have the camera operator, who's myself. I have the editor, who is myself. I have the lighting director, who's myself. I have the narrator, who is myself. So, you know how that goes on. So anyway, and part of the reason why I'm here is just, it's good to reconnect with the Roberts, and I've had a project under development for many years that concerns my daughter, and a kind of a docudrama of her experiences in life. And she was featured a few,
About
2 or 3 years ago. The church did a, have you ever seen Hope Works? I know what that is.
Yeah.
And she was in the original Hope Works, where they share like a TED Talk, 10-minute, 15-minute presentation. And right now, she's got over 2 million views from that, with one of the biggest popular views there. But she's in a wheelchair, and there's a whole lot of exciting things that have happened with her since that her injury that I think is important to be shared with others. And it initially started out as a little movie concept, and now it's moved into an 8-series, a mini-series that we're trying to develop. So
I call it the antidote to Tiger King.
yeah,
Is that what you said?
well, there's so many films, there's so many docudramas or mini-series out there that talk about dysfunctional families, or we have one which is a functional family that has problems, but how they get working through that. So that can be all shared with you at some future time, but that's kind of why I'm here to reconnect that.
First name again was?
I'm Brian.
Brian.
So Brian Kaler. We have a Taylor, just like Taylor, only with a K.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, Brian's father, Ken Kaler, was one of our original board members and founders of the ALMA organization.
Wow.
And Amy and I are friends as well. Yes. We share the second living quarters together, which is the barn, which my wife and daughters spend every part of the time.
Yeah.
We've been together for 10 years.
Yeah,
or so.
10 years.
Yeah.
11. Amy White, and by the way, I was thinking, I just love stories. So anybody that's got some story and you want to work through some ideas, contact me, ring me up, text me first, and then I can usually, I don't have self-service in one side of the barn. But just, if you just want, I would love to just go through and just do a first level. We talked about this last week, that first level of role functions and determining, if the story's whole and complete. I mean, it can be as little as 15 minutes. It can go up to an hour. I feel very, very strongly in that there is a way to make sure our stories connect with their target audiences. And if, the sooner I can get to people and know, go through this process and make sure that, what is it you want your audience to be feeling at the very end of the film? What do you want them to go away with? What do you want them talking about? And what is your audience age? What is their range? And just making sure that we've got the structure set up for that predictable emotional response. And so I like hard copy.
Okay.
And it's just, just because, what do I say? I just want to be of service and help, and it's my candy, you guys. It is my thing that I would do above anything else. It's my escape from feeding horses, mucking stalls, and driving tractors.
I would think that would be an escape from the rest of the world. Dealing with horses.
Not when you're bored. Not when you have orders. Okay.
And when you do it every day.
So it wears thin after a while, right?
Right now we have really good people. And yes, my daughter's hero, since she was 9 years old, has been Cambry. And every time school would ask, you to do a report on your hero. Oh, you should write about. And she's like, I don't know who. And they're like, well, Taylor Swift. Or she's like, no, it's Cambry. So every single report that she did on a hero was about Cambry.
Dennis?
I'm Dennis Packard. I started in Culver City. My father was training to be an actor, and when I came along, he had to get a real job. My mother told him. And so he started building sets on MGM Studios. My grandmother ran a little restaurant right across from MGM Studios where all the workers would come and eat. And a number of my uncles worked there at the studios in special effects or various kinds of things. I went on to study music a lot, and but transferred into philosophy and was hired at BYU, and went back then into the arts and taught philosophy of art and philosophy of film for years and years. And was really concerned with how people could work in the arts and yet survive and have normal families and so on. So I appreciate you guys waiting for me. I had car trouble. I just wanted to do some presentation of it, so I appreciate you waiting. Nick and I have been working on some Ed Catmull stuff, and I guess I sent out a little thing of some notes you can take a look at. We hope to have something ready by next time. I've enjoyed reading or listening and then in part reading his book quite a lot. And I just keep seeing all kinds of LDS background kinds of things, and I really appreciate his emphasis on getting organized the right way and having the right people there and working together in the right way. And that feels to me just really essential. I've been working on getting out to a filmmaker with a large YouTube following, some scenes and montage opening kinds of things that he will hopefully shoot, and then we'll use it to take it with the treatment to a distributor and make a case for that. We're also trying to do another film festival. Last year we got a slew of films in a really short time, and now we're going to ask for film scripts and work with them on it. I've been looking at some of your work at Garrett's piece, The Carpenter, and Brandon's piece shot in Osaka's restaurant. I was very impressed with the artistry of the shots.
Let's launch here. And I had mentioned before, be ready to take a sip out of a fire hose. This is a condensed version, way condensed version of a condensed version. And I'm going to be rapid. I think I ought to be rapid here because I have a lot of stuff to cover. First of all, grab your things you're going to take notes on, whatever you're going to do your notes on. And I say that because I want you to remember these things. These are important things.
We'll have the recording as well. So.
Okay, all right. And I'm going to go rapidly through this. It won't do justice to all of these. So every one of these slides that you'll see and the concepts, the things have a lot of depth, a lot more to it behind all of it.
So if I set the timer for about 12 minutes and you got 3 to wrap up, does that work for you?
First, before we start though, I want you to do something. And that is, look across the table and tell me what you see. What do you see across the table?
Masked people.
Friends.
Friends, masked people, what?
Bank robbers.
Bank robbers. Okay.
I'm scared.
What do you see? Collaborators. That's a great one, right?
I see light emanating from some
Visionaries.
Great
Visionaries.
in the future.
Okay. So some of the things you just use as descriptors are descriptors of functions, and that's just fine. That's okay. We are functionary people as well. But here's what I'm suggesting. That you look across the table and put on celestial glasses. If you want to be celestialized, you'll need to learn to look through celestial eyes. If you are otherwise like almost everyone else, you are looking through the glasses, through mortal and natural man eyes. And what I'm speaking of here today, I will use terminology, some of it, and we're talking film. We're talking filmmaking. Some of the terminology I will use will, and I'll quote some scriptures and such, will be LDS kind of perspectives. But that doesn't mean you only do that, well, I'm doing an LDS type film here, so that's what I'll think in that mode. No, what I'm speaking of here are things that are spiritual in source and in connection and reach audiences for any kind of film. And you need to be oriented in your thinking like that. And so the reason I say look across the table here is, what do you see? Most people looking through natural man eyes, and they don't even realize this, they see objects. You're an object. That means, to me, and I'm talking natural man perspective, as an object, that means you are either an obstacle in my way, got to get past you, get you away from it, or you might be a vehicle to get something I want. That means you're a functionary. Or you might be an irrelevancy. And an object is a natural man way of looking at people. And it is not at all what we should be doing and understanding. We should be looking at people as sons and daughters of God. And I say that, yes, in the spiritual sense, but I say it also in the sense of who are you reaching in your films? If you're looking at objects and you're thinking of them as objects, more people for the box office, or how many eyeballs can you deliver for the TV, whatever, that's objects. And you're not going to reach minds and hearts and souls. And that's what you need to be doing, is reaching minds and hearts and souls. Even on non-church films, because it matters, it comes across. It is sensed that there's something meaningful there, as opposed to something that's just another film, another show or something, okay? So we're talking about that. Here's something I wanted to just start with also, an orientation. Doug, my Avid system at my office. And so these are pretty large monitors, even though, if I were sitting there, I'd be filling the screen. At this proximity, it fills my face. Nice. And it is really great. One button mapped to go full screen, and just as quick as can be, go back to this. But after I got my new system, this is a year and a half ago, I had started a project, and the project I started was, this one. Come on. And that was a little documentary I was doing, and it looks great, terrific on all of that. Then I pull up an old project, and it's all blue. What? What's the problem here? This is Avid. I paid huge amount of money for all of this. Hardware, software, everything is blue.
Oh, no.
James is looking really blue. Poor guy. I feel so sorry for him.
It looks like Avid.
Man. Something fishy going on here. This is just not working. But there is a merit. There is some redeeming value to this. Bluetooth. So I thought, okay, at least my computer has Bluetooth. So I call up tech support for Avid, and they navigate me through a bunch of screens and say, click this button. I clicked it, and everything's great. No problem. And I ask, what happened? What did it do? What's the difference? What made all that difference? And the answer, and no Bluetooth now. And the answer was, it recalibrated the color management system. The color management system. It's a recalibration. So I'm asking all of you to recalibrate your thinking about filmmaking in the next few minutes. There's my preamble, and now we can start, okay? So recalibrate, and don't be looking through natural man eyes at filmmaking or at other people anymore, okay? So let's rise above that. And here's what my thinking is. This is one of my favorite production stills. I'm not even in it. And we've got Brian right here, Brian Sullivan, my DP, and he's looking at the monitor right here. We've got Curtis here, first AC, focus puller, looking at the monitor here. And, come on, I can't remember his first name. The second AC, looking at the monitor. Who else is looking at the monitor here? Precisely, right in the eye line, looking right at the monitor. And that's my favorite shot of the whole production stills of this film, just
Wow.
because, yeah, I think he's looking over our shoulders and is willing to be of help to us if we're willing to listen. Okay, one of the main functions of communicating stories is to map our experiences. I like that phrase, map our experience of the world around. That's what storytelling is. It's a map of experiences. It's an experience map. Stories are maps. They take us on an experiential journey. And it is vicarious experience, but it can be as effective as any real life. We know the term vicarious in the church, right? There's value to that from the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And so I threw in, there was a reason for that. Here, I do want to get to this though. Nuanced vocabulary, visually and verbally, of film, the greater the details of the map, the more nuanced the vocabulary. Therefore, the more meaningful and useful and memorable it is to us, we can access feelings, make connections, find solutions to problems we wouldn't otherwise have. Otherwise find. So, all meaningful and lasting learning in life is experiential in nature. Now, I am speaking that terminology because that sounds like, oh, that'd be good for an educational film. Every film has meaning. And some of it's fluff and shallow and not that great, and you forget about it when you flip the channel or you walk out of the theater. But every film has some level of meaning. Do you want to make something that is useless, meaningless, foolish? Or do you want to have something that has meat and worth and value in it? A story carries cause and effect. The action leads to the result. This action leads to this result. That action leads to that result. Cause and effect. Every story has cause and effect in it. Every story has three prime components as its seeds. And there's so much more to it, but here are the seeds. First of all, challenge. Some kind of a challenge. And then second, a struggle. And then third, a resolution. Now, expand from there. Expand from there. We are here on this earth to have strong moral experiences. We can learn from the experiences of others. All meaningful, lasting learning is experiential in nature. I like Plato's statement here, those who tell the stories rule society. And that's mighty important. Okay, what a director does, and I want to go into a section here where I'm talking about directing and all of the tools that you use. A story is principle put into action. And here I'm talking directing, and yes, we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts and other things, but you've got to have this mindset. You've got to have a comprehension of all of this. After I have called for a take, cameras are rolling and all that, what's the word? Action. Because that's what story is. It is principle put into action. So, yes, there are some times when I won't, well, actually, I have an echo. You know what it's like. I have an echo, and I will just nicely be talking to the actors and all that, and I'll say, all right, let's shoot this. And
Quiet on set, pictures up.
That's right. And usually it's a lot louder than
That's
that.
the first AD.
That's right. And so then with everybody, everything's set, and then I'll say action. Usually,
Action!
that's right. And it's an echo, loud echo. Now sometimes, once in a while, I will say, let me just say it. And I'll say, I'll just do that. I mean, once in a while, depending on the nature of what we're doing on the scene. But action is what it is about. And so I'm calling action, and we get things happening here, we get things moving, and action is story put into principle. What are the actions? What are the consequences of those actions? We show the audience the truth. So when somebody hands me a script, and I'm going to watch that script, I'm first looking for the truth. What are the truths that are in this script, in this story? What are the truths? And I mean life truths, things that are life truths, things that are meaningful, that if you were to interpolate backward, deconstruct the story, script, you'd say, here's the principle behind that story. And it's important that we know that. Otherwise, you're putting out stories that kind of meander off here, meander off there, and they don't grab hearts and minds. So, character arc, story arc, give the audience consequential knowledge, many other things. Lousy films are made by directors who reached their goal. Lousy films are made by actors who reached their goal. The problem is, their goal was to take an ego trip. So I'm giving you principles of great filmmaking. So bad films dry up investment capital. That's also why we started this whole group here, because we don't want to have that happening anymore. So a few of you have heard me say this before. I taught at BYU. I was asked to come back and speak to some students several years back who were in their senior year getting ready to graduate and all wanted to be directors. There were about this many. And while I'm being introduced, it occurred to me what I should say to start with. And I said to the group, I said, so you want to be a director, okay? Who does the director direct? And somebody said, well, obviously directs the actors. Somebody said directs the crew. And I said, yeah, it's a dumb question. Everybody needs to answer that question. Second question, what about them specifically does the director actually direct? And somebody said, well, directs the actor's dialogue. Somebody else said the blocking. Somebody said, well, camera position. And I said, yeah, dumb question. Everybody knows the answer to that. Third question, what instruments does a director use? Somebody said, well, would you say that the director's viewfinder is an instrument? Find this focal length. Somebody said, well, the camera would be an instrument. Somebody actually said the script might be an instrument. And I said, yeah, dumb questions. Everybody knows the answer to those. And lousy films are made by directors who think those are the right answers. And those are dead wrong. And you'll make lousy films if that's what you're thinking. So who does the director direct? The director directs the audience. That's who you are directing. You are directing the audience. And you have no business directing a film if you're not every nanosecond thinking about the audience. That's who it's for. That's why. And so the second question, what specifically about them, the audience, are you directing? You're directing their thoughts and their emotions. That's what you're directing. They're paying you to take them on a journey of ideas and feelings. And it's not manipulation, although yes, you're taking them on this path, so you might call that manipulation, but it is a journey. That's what a story is. That's what a novel is. Life, the universe, everything is that. And that is what we're taking them on. Okay, the third answer, by the way, what instruments does the director use? Actors are my instruments. A director of an orchestra doesn't make any sound. Who makes the sound? The performers, the actors, the players. And so actors are my instruments. And yes, so I'm directing Lauren Hawley here, and Richard. So I sent off the crew to go light and prep another set while I'm directing a rehearsal with them. And one of the first things I will do, say for example, we've got right here, I said to Lauren, to Richard, I said, okay, because a director has no right being on a set if he or she doesn't already know exactly every camera angle, every nuance, every element that they would like to see here. But also, a director has no business being on set if they're going to dictate it all to everybody. Because now it's only the level of talent that the director has if everybody cooperates well. And not going to get all the other great things that would come out of that. So I already knowing what I had preconceived in great detail, I said to Lauren and to Richard, I said, okay, you've got these props, this setting right here. Let's do a kind of a first read through. And this is precious, expensive time. I've got 2 Panavision cameras sitting there and 40 crew members waiting on all this. And I'm using it really wisely by asking that question of them and letting them start to work through and step through some of the elements there. And so in directing the actors, in fact, let me go here. Okay, philosophy of directing here. Let's go forward. I already did that, excuse me. Director, yes, I did that as well. All right, okay, false acting. I've got to address this. False acting is a monster of such frightful mien that to be hated means but to be seen, but seen too oft. Familiar with its face, we first endure, then pity, then embrace. And I think that's why you see nice, polite, kind LDS audiences sit through and be patient about a lousy film, and then go and say to people, oh yes, you should go see that film, you know it's about something. They're not going to be patient forever, and they're not going to sit down through that. So let's stop the phony acting. False acting is the worst sin and that's the most common sin. I say false acting because phony, unbelievable, not real people, but they are contrived, both in script a lot of times, but also in the directing. And I've seen some really great actors that I've used before do lousy work when they were directed by a director who doesn't know what they're doing. And so we're going to go through some of the details on that. Okay, when I was a child at directing, I spake as a child, understood as a child, but when I became a real director, I put away childish things. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 11. Okay, rehearse. Now I've got props here. We've been walking through and maneuvering around some of this stuff and doing it fairly rapidly, and now I'm bringing crew in, and he's getting ready for the first thing. Okay, when I do acting master classes, I do 15 things, and here's the first 5 of them. Intent, and this is all part of story code, all of that. That's what is the intent of this actor, of this character is what I mean. What is the intent of this character? And that would mean a through line. You've heard that term sometimes perhaps, a through line. But the intent of this character is pretty much throughout. Now there's character arc as well, which usually does not change intent as much, or does not bend intent. Okay, objective. So I'm stepping onto a set early in my career, and an actor comes up to me and says, okay, what do I want? And it wasn't a trick question. They weren't trying to be silly. They were asking, what's my motivation here? What's my objective? And I say objectives plural because almost always, not always, but almost always in every scene, there's more than one objective. And they're usually sequential. Your objective right now is this. Now things change during the course of this scene, and you have a change in your objective. Now prior to that, you'll have a change in plans. I'm trying to reach this objective. And I say all of this because this is story elements, but this is directing elements. And that's why I'm writing the book about that in relation to the cracking the story code. Because, in relation to directing, because a director can take a great script and ruin it, trash it. So, intent, objectives, there's so much more behind every one of these things. But plans, what is my plan meaning the character's plan in this part of the script, of this scene? What is my plan for reaching that objective? And so I'm moving forward on that. But because of dialogue, because of what happens in this scene, it's not working. I've got to change plan. And I try another plan. Every time you have a change in plan, that's a beat. Sometimes people say, oh, do this and then wait a beat. That's really foolish to use that terminology. The reality is a beat is a subset of a scene. How many beats are in a scene? Well, it depends on the scene. But if you take a scene, it might have 3 beats in it. It might have 8 or 10. But that beat is a change of plan to reach an objective. Or it might be a change of objective. Obstacles. Obstacles are immensely useful to an actor. Boy, I could tell you neat stories about how to approach all of that. Choices, got to do that. Okay, I'm working with, but I'm usually not speaking these consciously out loud. I need to, engage, listen, process, respond. Great things there. Let me just mention here. I got to tell you a quick story. I was early in my career actually directing a film for BYU for the church. We were often on location down in Arizona filming, and the actress, her role, her character, was turning down her boyfriend to go back to college, and she felt compelled to do that because of family and other things. She didn't want to do that, and she was full of anxiety over that. Well, there's subtext in that, of course. She was not a very good actress, unfortunately, although she was good-hearted and such. I just did not have, that was who I had to work with. And I thought I can go through and teach her some acting classes here, but I've got crew, equipment, all this, the sunlight's burning. What am I going to do? And I thought, okay, I'm going to walk her through this and not even tell her. And I don't usually pull tricks on actors, but what I did is rehearsal wasn't working, do one take, and it wasn't anywhere near where it needs to be. And I said to the actors, give me a moment here. I go over to the crew and say, huddle, huddle. And I say, 5 minutes, and I'll come back here. I want to roll without them knowing it. Here's my signal. So watch for that. We'll tell Slade at the end. And so, don't give it away. And so I send him off, and I go to the fellow, and I say, I put my hands on his shoulders. I need you to search her soul. And I turn away from him, and he says, what do you mean by that? And I say, search her soul. I wanted him to be in a quandary. So I gave him a reason to be in a quandary. And so I go over to her, and I say, let's go for a walk. I knew that she was married a year ago or so. I met her husband just briefly. It was for audition. And I say to her, okay, tell me about what your husband said and did when he proposed to you. And she said, really? Why? I said, oh, I just love proposal stories. They're just nice, heartwarming. Tell me what he said. Did he get down on one knee? What? And she starts to describe, and I ask her some questions. He gets into more details. Yes, and then he said, and then I said, and oh, that's marvelous. Yes, that's great. And we come walking around. I bring us around in a circle here back to this position. I bring the crew in, and I give them the signal, and I whisper in her ear and say, that's your husband. Is that right?
What was that?
That's your husband. And you're going to tell him no. She looks at me. I say, exactly the words in the script. Action. And they start to walk. It's a dolly move, you know. They start to walk, and the camera's coming here, and the dialogue is there, and the tears start to come because she's anticipating. She's going to tell her husband, no, I don't want to marry you. And she's going through the dialogue on this, and it worked beautifully. At the end, I say, slate in. Oh, you were filming that? Well, what did I do? What did I do? Who knows? What did I do? What was that?
Pressure off.
Emotional recall.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
It was an emotional recall, and it was a substitution, which brought about subtext. Okay, hopes and fears. I got to mention that just quickly. Hopes and fears. I have a reason for that. That's my camera, by the way. I like that lens. Great lens. You cannot convey truth to people through false acting. Audiences, both consciously and especially subconsciously, reject the essence of any story presented with false acting. Audiences interpret false acting to mean the message is fake. That's what they interpret false acting to mean. The message is fake. So you go out and you present something that is true and meaningful, and you impose on these actors these things and these statements and these falsehoods, and they dutifully do what you direct them to do. And it's phony, and it's lousy, and it doesn't ring true, and the audiences reject it. So you cannot teach truth using falsehood. You can teach truth through stories, even fiction, but the acting performances must be true. Let me go down to the bottom paragraph. You cannot work, what will not work, never has, is trying to teach truth through false presentation, especially false acting. Okay. By the way, that was an instrument I was using. Other dimensions of falsehood in film: contrived plots, trite, predictable, in-your-face didacticism, false grammar of the film language, on-the-nose dialogue. What does on-the-nose dialogue mean?
Say what you feel.
Yeah, as opposed to subtext and what's really going on inside them. So, see, there's a director. He knows this stuff. And writers know that, or need to. Great ones know that. So, a confused mind says no. And that includes audiences. Confused audiences reject the film, its meaning, its truth. Okay, I like this quote. The fault, dear director, is not in your stars that your films are underlings, but in yourself. That's Cassius to, Brutus saying that. It's in the first scene of, or first part of first act of Julius Caesar. Okay. So many more things I don't have time for. The same things here. Write this down. Doctrine and Covenants, section 100, verses 5 to 8, tells you how to make great films. Did you know that? Doctrine and Covenants tells you that. Because it's verse 8 that tells you the promise of what will be there if you do what verse 5 says to do, particularly. All right. Here it is. We'll just go past it. I will conclude with this. Okay, here's this book called Rolling Breaks, Another Movie Business. And we're scratching the surface here. Here's a great quote. We're going to get to the quote in just a moment. You just have to know the background here. Samuel Goldwyn. This isn't his most famous quote. What's his most famous quote? Samuel Goldwyn. Anybody know?
If I want to send a message, I'll go to Western Union.
Exactly. That's what he said. I don't make message films. You want to send a message? Call Western Union. Okay, listen to this, okay? From the book, my generation, right at the top, my generation learned about love and marriage, heroism and cowardice secondhand on slightly used celluloid. Quote, when you want to send a message, send it by Western Union, Sam Goldwyn once said to justify sailing his glittering entertainments down our Saturday afternoons. But we cheated Goldwyn. For us, every Saturday afternoon was a message. We are the depositories of 100,000 such messages. All the events of the real world filtered down to us through the personalities of movie stars. And in the dark of 100 movie theaters, we learned what was worth doing and the style in which to do it. From Marilyn Monroe's moist lips, this was in the 1950s, she's right, we were talking about, to Marlon Brando's torn t-shirt, to Jimmy Dean's rebellious slouch. The movies were our primer on what to desire. And after the movies were over, we parked our cars in some deserted street and spelled out our lessons on warm bodies. Ooh. I have.
Where's that quote from?
It's from the book Rolling Breaks and other Rolling Breaks. I had it there at the beginning here, and I have used that quote in sacrament meeting talks, but I haven't put in the last sentence. I've omitted the last sentence for such an audience or for youth firesides. Okay, okay. One last thing: skill set 1 and skill set 2. Two separate and distinct skill sets are major factors in film directors. And so people who are not able to recognize a really well-made film that has true acting, great meaning and heart and soul to it, great writing, and believable acting, but also great scene structure. I haven't even touched on that. Scene structure, such an important aspect as well, meaning directorially. You know what I'm talking about, scene structure. But there are a lot of people who can look at a marvelous, well-crafted, marvelous film, and then they can look at a lousy film that's trite, shallow, foolish, phony, and not know the difference. Why? So, there are two skill sets involved in filmmaking. Skill set 1, skill set 2. Talent to direct actors. This is skill set 1. Direct actors with truthful, honest, believable performances. That includes how to structure scenes, how to tell stories in compelling manner, use the visual tools of filmmaking, and particularly the grammar of the film language. And that's all skill set 1. Well, what possibly would skill set 2 be? Skill set 2, the ability and willingness to present one's self to others as if you possess skill set 1. It's called salesmanship. And who gets the money to make a film? The person with skill set 1 or the skill set 2? Skill set 2 is where the money goes. Because the person who's making the decision doesn't know the difference between a profound, well-crafted, beautifully directed, and therefore well-acted film, and one that's just lousy and phony. But if you have a skill set 1 director that has little skill set 2, they don't get the money. We need to do both. So the Apostle Paul, he identified 3 things that people said about him, and this is what they say about filmmakers. His letters say they are weighty and powerful, but his bodily presence is weak and his speech contempt. So I thought of this when, a year ago, gospel doctrine teacher says, "Oh, I would love to meet the Apostle Paul. What a profound, great man." I had a comment on that. If you were to meet him, you would dismiss him as a fool, as an idiot, as a meaningless person, unless he told you who he really was. That's the Apostle Paul. And so you have to see past all of that.
Which is the opposite of what Moroni and Mormon said about their words. So they said that their words are more powerful in person.
Yes, that's true. When I meet Nephi someday, it's in 2 Nephi chapter 31, verse 1. He says, he says
Don't fault us for our
Well, he also says that. Oh, come on. It's on the tip of my tongue and I swallowed. That's the problem. I'll think of it again in a minute. But he makes a great comment on that sort of subject. The bottom line is that for when a man speaks by the power of the Holy Ghost, the power of the Holy Ghost carrieth it to the hearts of the children of men. And then he has a preface on that. Skill set 1, Paul could create great communications that were weighty and powerful. Second and third show that Paul lacked skill set 2. People perceived his bodily presence to be weak. People perceived his voice and his speaking to be contemptible. There is an account that was written by somebody in the, first century AD that said that Paul was short and had stooped shoulders and high-pitched, whiny voice.
High whiny.
I think Josephus said that.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
said? Josephus. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
A wise person
Whiny.
cares about. I say this because anybody who's a producer, you're looking to get a director, get skill set 1 directors. And there are a few around there, not very many. Okay. All right, let's go. I got to conclude here.
But Matt's won a few awards.
Okay, but one thing about skill set 2, you have to know this and avoid it. Skill set 2 is defined by Nephi. Skill set 2 filmmaking is defined by Nephi. It commands that there should be no priestcrafts, and priestcrafts are that men preach and direct and set themselves up for a light to the world, that they may get gain and praise of the world, but they seek not the welfare of Zion. In other words, they seek not the benefit of the audience. And so the benefit of the audience is who you're doing it for in every instance, every element. Okay, all right. Hope and fear, I got to conclude with this. Hope and fear. If you were to take any film, any well-crafted film, and present it to an audience, partway through, and stop it. Whoa, wait a minute. Don't turn it off. And you ask every member of the audience, what do you hope will happen? What do you hope will happen to this character right here? They would all have an answer to that. What do you fear might happen? Oh, no, I don't want them to open that door and go into that. I don't want them to do that. That's what, you know what? It's hope and fear that drives the audience fascination and interest with the film. So hope and fear are precious and extremely important in writing, but in directing as well, because that is what you are using. Okay. I'll conclude. Let's go out and make great films and learn our craft really well. And if you're the producer side, support the director in all of these things. So you have to understand these things as a producer. If you're on the writing of it, create scripts that are embedded with these great things. The subtext, not on the nose dialogue, and that have in them the meaning and benefit for people. There's one last scripture, and that is, I think, the most important scripture in all 4 standard works, because it's a job description of Christ. Would you like to know a job description of Christ? And why would you want to know that? There's a great book, and Robert Starling wrote a great book that also has a chapter in it about this subject matter. And the truth is that the early church fathers is what they're called, those who were the next generation after the Apostle Paul and Peter, James, and John and all that, and for the next couple hundred years, they call them their early church fathers. They said, a fellow named Athanasius, you can quote him, right? Athanasius, God became man so that man might become God. So story goes, at a Christian college somewhere in the Bible Belt, and we're talking a decade or 3 ago or whatever, a survey of world religions class. And that teacher, instead of standing up and saying, well, here's what the Presbyterians think, here's what the Seventh-day Adventists think, he would invite somebody in that was a member of that faith. He invited an LDS person in to talk about what the Mormons believe. And the fellow there said, all the doctrines go through all this, and then has question and answer. And the teacher raises his hand and says, tell me, I've heard this quote, that you believe that as man is, God once was, as God is, man may become. do you really believe that? And the fellow's thinking, oh man, if I go into all of this, they're going to be turned off or whatever, it's too heavy duty and all that. But he thought for just a moment all that, and he said, yes, we do believe that. That is true. Because we do. So he spoke honestly. And the teacher said, if that really is true, and this fellow's thinking, oh no, here it goes. If that really is true, I cannot think of any concept, any principle more exciting than that. Hats off to him for at least getting that. So, who are we making these films for? We're making films for people who have the potential of godhood. And their hearts will resonate if we're giving them truth, true acting, true writing, true, meaningful, beneficial things. So here's the job description of Christ. It's 2 Nephi chapter 26, verse 24. It's 5 verses before the one we saw a few minutes ago that defines bad directors, which are priestcraft, skill set too. So 5 verses before that, 2 Nephi 26, verse 24, it says, it's speaking of the Savior. He doeth not anything, save it be for the benefit of the world. For he loveth the world, even that he laid down his own life. It goes on with other stuff. But the great film directing is for the benefit of the audience. Because you care about them. And you will do whatever it takes to get your film on the screen for their benefit and not for your ego. So, there we go. Questions?
Those 5 questions you have up there, that's the 5 questions that I go through after finishing a first draft to start troubleshooting and improving the script.
Yeah, good.
Keep that up, I'm gonna take a picture of it.
Are you able to post this?
I've got through about a fifth of the presentation.
You want to just send the PowerPoint to everybody?
Yeah, I guess I could do that, but it's not
Lost in
polished.
translation.
It's not polished.
It's okay.
I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a
PowerPoint maker.
All right, we're visionaries and a little bit understands.
So that's true. That's true. I've done a couple of master classes on directing where I have brought some actors in, and it takes several hours to do this. But bring actors who are memorized on a scene. I purposely will bring in actors that I don't know, and I'll ask one of the agents to give them to me. I want them to have full memorization of a scene, and a scene that I'm not familiar with. And so I'll say, okay, let's see your scene. Go through it, and then I will direct them, going from the very beginning for the master class of other actors or other directors, and what you say to an actor, what you say that brings about great things. So anyway, all right.
Hitchcock used to say, a lot of people that he directed would say he doesn't direct. What he does is he casts and he expects the actor to act.
You know what that yields as a result? Now, Alfred, I'll meet you someday. We'll have to discuss this. but what that does, and I see it in church films. I see it in local films a lot. The lousy directors, the really lousy directors, impose on the actors, here's what I want you to do, here's what's in my vision, and I'm a visionary in a bad sense.
Right.
Director, and I want you to do it like this, and I want you to walk over here, and then I want you to, and they'll all of that stuff for them, and then the actors will go and they'll dutifully do that, because they have to, and it's phony and lousy. The mediocre level directors, not the lousy ones like that, the mediocre level directors do what you just quoted for Hitchcock, which may be an apocryphal quote, I don't know. But that yields uneven acting. Some performances are really quite good. This actor was not imposed upon by the director.
He nailed it.
He nailed it.
On his own.
On his own, exactly. And this other actor didn't. And needed help from the director, and the director didn't know how to give it to him. William Wyler directed Ben-Hur and things like that. There's a great quote from him. He said, somebody in the studio system, you're talking early 50s when your father was in the studio system there. So he might have known William Wyler. But one of the executives says to William Wyler, hey, why can't you be like this other director over here? He brought his last film in under budget and ahead of schedule. And William Wyler's answer, what's wrong with him? Did he run out of ideas? Great answer, actually. You should have a million ideas, but you've got to sift and adjust them. So Hitchcock was wrong when he said that, or if he actually said that. You've got
Well, a
to
lot of the
read
actors
and-
have said that he wouldn't impose a lot of stuff on.
Well, good for him in the
Maybe
sense that he
that was-
wasn't hindering.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't hindering.
I'll tell you what happens. You've seen it. You've seen it. You get you get two actors here, and one's doing really well, and the other one's struggling. What do you say to them? There are certain things you say that bring them and help them out. And sometimes more rehearsals here. This one starts to fade, and this one's coming up, and I'm thinking, okay, I better do a take while I've got something on both ends here.
Yeah.
But there are some other things you can say that help bring that about.
One thing, a lot of it has to come with directing the vision of the story that you have, right? I mean, I had the wonderful blessing of having two amazing lead actors for performing the beats that we're finishing up. And a lot of that just came with, they read the script, they got it, they understood it. We spent some time on the phone in pre-production talking about their characters, kind of, figuring out the ones, the details there. But once they showed up on set, because they had it like that, a lot of times I felt like a lousy director because I just sat there and they called action and then they gave like this beautiful performance that elevated the material. I'm like, you guys are amazing. But you do have,
But you had
do
done the
have those
directing
instances.
before camera rolls.
Right, and you do have those instances where something's not clicking. And I think that that's when you need to really, step in and say, okay, like this is not working, and be able to help them find those beats, those emotional reactions, that truth, whatever it may be.
I read about one director who was very perceptive in that regard. He had two actors, one, like you say, that gave a really good first and second take and then started to fade. The other one took 10 takes to really build up. So what he did was have somebody come in and read the lines with the one that, 8 times with that one, and then brings the other actor in.
But there are some other things you can do as well. We'll get to you in a sec. Hats off to you, though. Kudos to you that you didn't get in their way.
All right, thanks.
Because mediocre, lousy directors get in their way.
Yeah,
And-
you know what's fascinating though is before we jumped on into production, I watched the masterclass of directing by Ron Howard on the masterclass series, and he does a section in there where he brings in a bunch of new cast and camera crew, and he just kind of walks through what a day of filming looks like for a scene from Frost Nixon, and it's funny because what I picked up out of that was more what he did, not necessarily what he told you. But it was fascinating because he sat there and he did the rehearsal and he watched them. But then when he would direct, he would come in and he says, I noticed your instinct that you wanted to walk over here. I thought that was really smart. I think you should follow your instinct. And he actually directed a lot of the actors by making them feel comfortable to do what felt right in the moment. And it was something that I thought was really powerful because he didn't come in and say, I want you to walk over here. I want you to do this. He came in and said, I noticed that you felt uncomfortable here. I noticed that you wanted to be over there. I noticed you wanted to do this. And he helped them grow in terms of their ability as an actor.
Right. One of the things that I use a lot when I'm talking with an actor in a rehearsal like that is I ask them questions.
Mm-hmm.
So now why did you make that statement? I mean, it's in the script, it's memorized, but why did you make that statement? Well, actually, I think it's because of what they said here. So it's understanding the inner workings of the mind and heart. What you're directing when you're directing actors is you're directing their thoughts and their emotions on a pathway, which is what you want the audience to follow as well. And so I don't want any more than I have to. I mean, once in a while there's a logistical need. But I should say once in a while, fairly often there's a logistical need to work with that. But I don't want to impose externals on them. I want to get from the inside, but it's all from the inside out. It's acting from the inside out because it has to be directing from the inside out.
So then I have a question. Does that mean, then actors make good directors?
No,
Not always.
Not necessarily.
not necessarily.
Because they know how to talk to an actor? I mean, you notice that, well, Ron Howard, he was an actor, or he is an actor.
Jodie Foster, Bryce Dallas Howard just did DeLorean.
Mandalorian, yeah.
There's so much, by the way,
So explain, does that work? Is it, I mean, Clint Eastwood? He's a
Clint's a great director.
There's a lot of these actors who turn director.
You know, there's a lot of cinematographers who turn directors. There's a lot of editors who turn directors.
Yeah.
After Judge Whittaker had retired, he sent a letter to the president of Disney and said they ought to hire me, and they sent me a letter back and said, yes, you're on. And I asked him, well, what would you recommend when I go down to the office there at Disney? And he said, if they don't have other need for you elsewhere, talk to them about editing. Because great directors come out of there. Robert Wise and a bunch of others. James Cameron. He's a member of ASE.
American Cinema Editors,
Yeah.
ACE.
So great directing. I had a scene in the film Mask. Has anybody seen that here?
Mm-hmm.
I saw it.
I had a scene, the fight scene. You do that last in case somebody actually misses where their fist should go and hit somebody, and you've got a bruise to deal with. I scheduled that last of all the shooting. But the executive producer is breathing down my neck over here. Doesn't bother me a bit. I know what I'm doing. And he was like that the whole time. And Brian Sullivan, the cinematographer, I'm going over shot lists with him. We've got 120 extras, all in costume and everything. And camera's waiting. And I'm going through, Brian, here's what we'll do first and second. I've got all the priorities. And he's the executive producer, just, I've got all these people waiting. And Brian turns and says, relax, you've got a director who knows editing. That was a great compliment. Because everything you do as a director has to be edited. And you've got to make it so it will edit together. One of the foolish things I hear from a director or would-be or so-called director is, well, make sure you get a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
Coverage? What kind of stupidity is that? You don't already know what you want and how it's going to edit together? In every instance, and by the way, I say that fully knowing that every film is created 3 times. The writing is the first creating, the directing is the second creation, and the third creation is the editing. Every film, whether I've edited it, I've done 7 for the BBC, and they've all been edited in London without me. That's how they do it. But every film, even though I had all these angles and everything lined up exactly in my mind, you take really good editing and take it up several notches. So it's recreated there.
But still, doesn't it help to have some acting, to know acting, to be able to be
Yes,
a
it
director,
does.
to act,
It can.
to direct acting?
Yes, it does.
I took acting classes just so that I could better understand where the actors are coming from to be able to direct them. But going back to your original question, just because you can perform doesn't mean you can direct.
That's right.
And there are different muscles, there are different abilities, which is actually why when it comes to like teaching at BYU or professors, I always cringe when people say those who can't do and those who can't teach.
Yeah.
Because I actually think that teaching is an important ability, and those who can do oftentimes can't teach. And so it's about understanding where your abilities lie, what your pros and your cons are, or weaknesses, and how you can strengthen those in order to facilitate the role that you're doing.
Or as Dirty Harry once said, man's got to know his limitations.
The great thing about a director is if you know your limitations, you know who to hire that can,
Right.
fill those spaces for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So regarding that, one of the reasons I'm happy to do acting master classes is because it exercises my acting muscles. Not acting muscles, but my directorial muscles, really
Right.
teaching the actors.
Right, to help
these
you
things.
in your directing actors.
So, yeah, there's.
That's my weakness right now, is that I'm an editor. Okay, I've come through editing, and in fact, I got into editing to go to directing. So I'm a good editor. So I'm trying to hope that I can make that jump to that chasm to the directing, but I'm just weak with actors.
There are some great things. Well, first of all, read 2 books, both by Judith Weston. You met her, right?
Yeah, when I worked for the church, I was a writer, producer, director for 9 years for the church. And one of the things that they did as part of our professional development was we had a day down here at the BYU Motion Picture Studio where they brought in Judith Weston from LA to give a full-day seminar to our producer directors on acting for directors. And so for that day, we all became actors. And Judith Weston taught us all about acting. But it was so that we, as directors, would be able to know more about working with actors.
So buy her 2 books. One called Directing Actors, and I can't remember the name of it.
I have it,
Okay.
and I've read it.
Well, no, you got to read it 3 times.
Oh, I read it twice. I need to get the third one.
You know what I'm talking about, the book?
Yeah, I've got it. Directing
And there's a bunch
actors.
of other.
And there's another one, you said what?
It's another one by her as well.
By her,
I don't know the
okay.
title of it. It's like the sequel.
Yeah, it's one thing to read, it's another thing to get on set and actually work with real people.
Oh, yeah.
It's the challenge.
Well,
Start small.
what you do then is you go out and find some actors, because there are some groups around that you say, I want to work with you on some things.
Do scene workshops.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh-huh. I think Mike Flynn does some acting workshops. I think.
Yeah, Michael's a really good actor.
Yeah.
I purposely made him really angry at me once. Purposely.
You did?
Because it was in service of the scene. And I needed him rounding up on this
Right.
in terms of anger. And he comes to me and he says, you know, Robert, you really need to talk. And he names this other actor he's in dialogue with. Because he's not giving me what I want. And I'm thinking, I'll tell you that. I know what I want out of Michael. And I want that of him. And I'll deal with that separately. And I said to him some things about acting and such. And he kind of, and that's what I wanted. That's what I needed. So I purposely made him mad at me.
You know what might work out really well for you is if you're editing a project that's in the pipeline, to see if you can shadow the production. That way you can see how what the director is doing on set translates to the footage that you're getting and piecing together in post.
Did the Ron Howard masterclass help you?
Yeah.
He
No,
has
I
some
think
good
it
things
was.
in there. He has a few things I would like to talk to him about.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was thinking of taking that. I haven't taken it
Look,
yet.
the reality is we all have different personalities and styles.
Right.
The way that Ron Howard directs his team works is going to be completely different than the way that you do it. But that's like he's got his team and you've got your team. He's telling his story.
But there are some key elements.
But you can take out those key elements and
There are some key elements.
definitely apply them. Like the way
They're
that
tools.
yeah, like the way that I saw how he encouraged actors to trust their instincts while also directing them the way that he wanted them to perform, right? You can pick up on those kind of things.
And it takes time, I think, to get your bag of directing
Yep.
tricks, not tricks, but your bag. You know how actors have a bag?
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
You
Well, I feel
gotta
like
have a director's bag.
I feel like it's like writing, right? Like everybody always talks about like having your style. Like, what's my writing style?
Mhm.
And the truth is,
Your voice.
your voice just comes from your writing. It's just from doing it. Like nobody can tell you what your style is. You can go through and you
because
can
it's what Robert's saying here. It comes across falsely when you
Exactly.
try to use someone else's style, because that's not how you are.
yeah.
And so, it's not.
We're not all Spielbergs.
It's
Well, thank goodness.
It's trial.
Not one.
What it comes down to is really trial and error. You go out, you do it, you find
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work, what you like and don't like, because that's you are your only compass that you're going to have in terms of where you think you are, right?
One of the best stories I ever heard about directing was Sidney Pollack was directing Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were with Robert Redford, and there's a scene in which Barbra Streisand, I guess, had to come around the corner after hearing something and had to cry. And take after take, I couldn't get her to get to that level. Sidney Pollack, I mean, this comes over, I guess, over time. He just went up to her and hugged her. That's all he did. Okay, let's do another take. She came around that corner and cried, bawled, and couldn't stop crying.
So,
But he knew, but it was obviously it was instinct, like you said, Brandon. But that comes with time. He just knew what he had to do as a director. He just hugged her, and then emotion came. That's one of the best stories on directing I ever heard.
That story is, and I haven't transcribed the whole thing. He was speaking for 2 hours to the AFI on a seminar about directing.
Yeah, it's the story though, right?
It's from a long time back. But he had gone to the studio and said, I want to have Barbara Streisand as an actress in here, along with Bob Redford. And they said, Redford, yeah, but Streisand, she's only a singer. She's not an actress at all. And she never acted in anything before. And his response, if she can sing like that, she can act. And he knew what to tap into right there. And in that story, he was standing behind her, he's saying, and just put his arms around her shoulders and waited and waited. And then he gave the signal to roll and then set it back and then action.
And that's how it happened.
But it's actually a great example what you give, because it's the inside work we're talking about here, the inside things. And so what I will say to actors, almost all that I say to them, is inside stuff. Sometimes I have written dialogue, new dialogue for the script, that I'll say to the actor, you don't have to memorize this word for word, the concept, here's what I want you to memorize. Oh, okay, where do I speak this? You won't speak it, you'll think it. I want you to think it, and here's where. And
You're creating the emotion.
that's right.
Michael Kidd's got a great story on that. I can't remember what movie it was, but he was talking to the director. He's like, I don't really have anything to say here. He's like, no, you've got all kinds of things to say. You've got wonderful things that you want to say. You've got millions of things that you want to say, and I want you to process all those things, and then don't say. And
Well, that's subtext, a lot of
Yeah.
it. But you have to be careful about subtext. I saw a fairly common film, I won't name it, you've all seen it, where the director, who was not a great director at all, you would all know his name, had an actress come, and she was just full of angst. And it was all this going through her mind and her thoughts and her concern and anxiousness. Well, there are times when that's what you want. This was not one of them. And we're watching this, and I know this story behind what this was showing, and I'm thinking, what is wrong with her? And what's the problem here? Oh, this is bad. And it turns out it was completely out of character, completely wrong. And somebody, I guess, had told the director, well, they have to have some subtext, so you got to see the wheels turning. Well, you want to see wheels turning when it's the right thing to do. Because actors are like people. We all have thoughts going through our minds and hearts. So are they in service of the story and progressing? One of the great things in your story code there, it's genius what the story code is, really. And I say that from a directorial perspective as well as a writer. But one of the great things there is it's speaking about, right at the beginning, it says that it is not plot that drives a great story or a great script. It's not plot. It's characters. And it's the ideas, the thinking, and the actions of those characters which then create plot. So people who don't understand story as a director will think about plot. Well, you got to do this, and you come on over here and you do that. They're not thinking about
why?
Yes, exactly. The why and the inside work of the actor. The
Well,
inside.
why would the actor do? Why would that character?
Now, there are sometimes I mentioned when, and I mentioned this early on, that there are sometimes some external logistics that have to be imposed on an actor. I will go and say to them, suppose you were to walk over here, why would you do that? And they might say, well, maybe I wouldn't. I said, well, maybe you wouldn't, but if you did, why? What would be the reason for that? well, I might do it because. Now they're thinking it through just a little bit. And we work on that, we set a mark for them over here in rehearsal. And then they start to, yeah, I can see that. Now I've got what I want. But I didn't impose it upon them, dictate it. Benevolent dictator, that's stupidity. Don't think like that.
Right.
You're not a benevolent dictator. You're an artist, and you are an artist of artists, trying to bring out the very best in them.
Well, the flip side of that thing where you have the, motivating the, I remember sometimes a director is constrained by making their schedule and the light and the time of day. I remember this story about Hitchcock. One time they were up on the roof of these buildings, and the last of the sunlight was fading away quickly.
Yeah.
And there was an actor over there that says, I want you to just run right over here across the rooftop. And the actor said, well, what's my motivation? Hitchcock said, I'll tell you when you get here.
But get here.
There are some times when you will say something like that as a director because of logistics and make it work. But this is one of the things I teach actors in the master class. There are the vast majority of directors who are not going to talk about the inside elements that need to go through your mind and all that. So you have to come up with them.
So the actor does.
If the director is not competent, as the vast majority are not,
Right.
the actor has to
Find it.
Yes, find it inside them. But we'll find it in the script. And that's why.
Within the story.
So when I talk about intent, objectives, plans, obstacles, choices, I'm looking at those as a director, but I'm asking I do that with actors in my acting class. I say, you need to be looking for these things in the script, in your character. And so I will go through in the acting class and say, tell me in your character, what is your intent? What is your objective right here? What is your plan right here? And it doesn't all have to be conscious, but it has to be enough conscious that it flows and it gives motivation and motor.
One of the passages that I referred to, it actually has New Testament roots. It's sort of an LDS theory of improvisation. And it says, treasure up in your minds the words of life, and it should be given in the very moment that which you should say. Good actors can rattle off their lines. They can run lines back and forth, say them really fast. Some people would say, just say them really fast. You got it. So it's in the back of your mind. You're not reaching for it. Good actors know a lot about the story and about their motivation. They are not thinking about their motivation when they're doing it. It's back there. And what they need to do is, in the moment, be connected to each other and to how this guy says that, this gal says this, and it will appear in the moment, and it feels like it's improvisation.
Right.
It's in the moment.
This is good. This is really good. A few minutes ago, or when I was making my presentation, I went through some of these things, and I rapidly went past a slide that dealt with that very thing.
Yeah.
So engage, listen, process, respond. And those four things are what you're speaking of right there. And what I tell actors is when you are reading the script, you're going to read through it a bunch of times, you're going to memorize it, you're going to go through all these lines to memorize it. Now you come to rehearsal, and you're going to rehearse it how many times? I don't know, it might be a handful of times, it might be 20 times. And then you're going to have the first take, and a second take, and a third perhaps. By the way, I always do 2 takes. I'll never do only 1 take. The reason why is that I don't want to have any hairs in the gate. But even now, I don't want to have a corrupted file possibility. So I'll always do at least 2 takes. But you're going to do several takes, 2 or 3 or 4. Something's wrong if I'm doing more than 4. But I'm going to have these takes here from this camera angle. Now this camera angle. Now that one. Now we're reverse. And they're going to go through this 40 or 50 times or more. This whole scene. And every time must be the first time. So you wipe away on your conscious front, I mean, it's in the back of your mind, you wipe away all the preconceptions and all that, and you walk into it, and now you have to be engaged in what's going on. You have to listen to what the other character is telling us. Because now that becomes motivation for what you speak. And so that's the processing. How long does it take to process?
Yeah, the reading aspect, Stanislavski, the theorist, would say that things have to become second nature, which means you are not consciously thinking about it.
Yep.
It's back there. In fact, that passage about treasure up means
The
take time and look at it and admire it and everything, and then it will come up. And so sometimes you'll have an actor who needs to have a mannerism or a way of walking or something. How do you help them get that as a second nature? You stop and you say, let's practice that for a while. Or like blocking. You say, let's do this several times. So can you do it? Now I want you to talk to me while you're doing it. Can you talk with me about anything else? So that you're not even thinking
The
about
inner game of
it.
tennis.
Then you know that it's second nature. So sometimes you have to stop and go over something over and over, a mannerism or whatever, and then say, okay, now forget it. It's got to be lost because you're just now involved in the
Responding in
Another,
real time.
another thing that helps with that really well, when I was working with some high school students, they would have a hard time memorizing their lines. So I'd say, okay, I want you to go through it once with the Russian accent. Now go through it with a French accent. Now go through it with a Southern accent. And they did 10 times. And through that, they'd always slip out of character from that accent. But every time as they went through it, they would come to their own voice. And they'd have it memorized just like that. It was a really powerful trick.
Now, one of the things, I mentioned William Wyler before in the 50s. He was known as the actor's director, and they loved having him cast them because they knew they had a better shot at getting an Oscar if he was the director for them than anyone else. The problem is, he didn't understand acting to this degree of inside-out kind of stuff. So what William Wyler would do that would get, and it would accomplish what you're talking about, it took a lot of money and a lot of time, is he would say to the actor, okay, do it again. 45 takes, 60 takes. We're talking 65 millimeter film and motion picture film, that's not cheap. And so he would do 60 takes until finally it had some life and feel to it. Well, don't do that as an actor, as a director. Rehearse, prepare, know the inside stuff, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 takes.
Spielberg would do 20 takes. But
Sometimes
he said a lot of times he would go and when he's in editing, he would almost always gravitate back to one or two.
Yeah.
The first one or two.
So
You know why? What do you think? Why do you think he would gravitate back to the first?
Spontaneity.
There it is.
Because what I will say to actors, I don't want to say this, what I don't want to say, but I will if I have to, is I will say, I want spontaneity. I just need advance notice.
It's something that's hard to do. I had a situation when I was doing an ADR session with an actress, and she was someone who came in, she knew her lines, she had it all down, like she was great. But we got to the section of ADR where she knew what she was supposed to perform, and it just wasn't coming out. And it was driving her crazy, and every time we did, I was like, nope, that's wrong, nope, that's wrong, nope, that's wrong. And so I finally took her jacket. I was like, here's your jacket, and I handed it to her, and I said, I want you to deliver all the lines, but I don't want you to think about it. I want you to focus on like what this material feels like. I want you to focus on whether it's hot or cold or soft or coarse, and I want you to explore all the details of this jacket during the ADR session. She's like, I'm not gonna be able to do that. It's gonna be bad. And she starts going through it, and she gets about halfway through the delivery, and she stops and says, I am so sorry, Brandon, this isn't working. She gives me the jacket back. She's like, I just have to do my own process. And the sound designer turns his head and says, that was actually really good. And she turns to me and says, dang it, Brandon, give me my jacket back. But it was working. But the thing was is she knew everything. It was all there, but she was focusing on it the whole time. Yeah. And so
You brought her focus. You took her focus away.
I had an acting student in the class, and he did an audition with Anthony Hopkins up on the Salt Flats, for that movie called the
World's Fastest Indian.
Right. And he didn't get the part. And so then we had to find out, well, why didn't you get the part? What did you do? And what he did is he memorized his lines with intonation and everything in them. And he shouldn't have done that. He should have memorized the lines flat and then let the intonation occur in the moment
That's right.
as you're responding
This is
to it.
good.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit like this about doing it in
The
different
spontaneity.
languages and so on.
Spontaneity.
You gotta break away from a rigid thing that keeps you back from doing it in the moment. And the touching the clothes or sensing what's going on around you and not thinking about this stuff, that gets you in character.
But this is good. Something I've done before with, actually I've done it 2 or 3 times over the years, is I've said to an actor when they're struggling and all that, is I will say to them, I want you to do this piece of business. And I'll give them some props and such. Do this piece of business. And they'll say, well, what's that got to do with my character? I say, just relax, just do it, and we'll figure this out later.
I've heard about
My
that.
intent was never to have that in this.
And I think that's a very good audition approach. You have somebody come in and they've got their lines memorized. And then they say, okay, now I'd like you to sit here and pick up that book and turn over to here and do all this and deliver your lines. If they can do that, then you've got somebody that's really going to work with you.
The way I conduct auditions, I mean, there's a lot of elements to it.
Yeah.
The first thing I do will really show me whether or not it's worth going to the next step. And that is, I will greet the person, say hello, and ask them to tell me about themselves. Just tell me about your background, what you do, what you care about. And sometimes they'll say, well, why? And I'll just, I just want to get to know you a little bit. I'll watch what their gestures are. I'm watching for a baseline of how they present themselves without acting. I want to see no acting from this actor. Ultimately, in a film, and I actually one time said this to an actor on set while we were about ready to roll, I said to the actor, I said, you're excellent as an actor. You've done really, really well, very carefully crafted and all that. And I don't want to see the acting. Don't act. I want to see life. I want to see reality. Oh, okay. So what I do in auditions is I will say, tell me about yourself. I'm watching for baseline. What's the tone of their voice? How do they present themselves? You see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And I'm watching for all this.
And as you listening to that, you could get up and start pacing around and turning and something. Is he responding to it? Or is he
That's a
just
good
locked
point.
into his own little thing? Stanislavski once said, some actors are so rigid, you could have a man out on the stage proposing to this woman, and then if it was actually another man that came there, he would do it in the exact same way. And he says, that's all wrong.
So what I'll do with actors auditions is I will then say, after that, I will then say, now, give me what you've prepared for the audition. And they'll say, well, memorize, or what do you want? I'll just, whatever you've prepared. And they'll say, well, how do you want to present it? I'll just, however it seems right to you.
Yeah.
And then I'll be watching and listening for, number one, I'm always looking for, do I believe this? Is this real? My truth detector is what I'm always most prominently looking for. Do I believe this is a real person, or is it an actor putting on a performance? That's what I'm looking for. And then whatever they do, however they do it, after they're done, because I'm watching all of this, but after they're done, I would formulate in my mind, what would be 180-degree opposite of that? 180-degree opposite. And then I'll express to them, not that term, but how about if it were as if, and I'll give them an as if, that's another thing we'll read about more, and I'll give them an as if that is totally opposite from that. And they'll say, really, is that how you want this? No, not necessarily, but just as if it were this. And then I will watch the performance a second time. The vast majority of them, it's the same. And that's a big problem. They can't take direction. They can't take direction. Once in a while, I'll see somebody who really does the as if, and can do that well. But yeah, there's a great story from Frank Capra, who was directing the scene in It's a Wonderful Life where George Bailey and new just married wife, by the way, what's her character's last name?
Yeah.
Her maiden last name?
Yes.
Her name was
Yeah.
Mary Hatch, by the way. In It's a Wonderful Life. And then she marries George Bailey. But they've just been married, and now there's a run on the bank, run on the savings and loan. They go in and he's saying to them, George Bailey is, he's saying, come on, you don't need all $240 of this. And he insists on it, and then somebody else, and somebody else. And then there's a woman, so there's about 4 characters that all go with this add-on. And it was not in the script. She was supposed to say something different, and Frank went over to her and whispered to her and said, ask for $17.33. And he didn't tell Jimmy Stewart about that. And so they're rolling camera, and she says, $17.43. And Jimmy takes his hands and puts them around her ears and gives her a kiss on the forehead. What a great scene. Not rehearsed. One thing I tell actors too is every time you hear me say action, you're in character. Right up until you hear cut. Under any circumstance, no matter what happens, with one exception, and that is there's something life-threatening. I'll allow you to get out of the way. Aside from that, in character every moment, every time.
And sometimes it helps to encourage them to get into character slightly before. And the way Stanislavski suggests that you do that is as you're going to the theater and you're in the carriage that's going there, look around and see the things that that character would notice and would stand out. You can do that on the set. Jimmy Dean would talk about he would look through a window and he would see something and he would connect with the person who was standing on the other side, which adds that character how he would see it. Because sometimes it's hard for people to get into character with the call of action. You know, they need to do it a little beforehand. And the way to do it is to say, how would my character respond in this situation right here?
And in regard to that, of course, that's method acting, which is great. I think it's marvelous. And yet, there's a whole lot of people who think they know method acting, and they really don't. But the idea behind all of that is to do presentational acting. Sometimes there are people actors who will say, or directors who will direct actors into this, well, your character would seem to go and do something like this, or they would be dynamic like that. And it's all external, first of all. It's not internal. So it becomes phony in that regard. But also it's in the mind of the actor, okay, I want to represent what my character would be.
Well, another way to do it is to say, given what you have been trying to do and to accomplish and your aims and objectives and so on, you're sitting here right now and you're getting some lunch. How would you proceed? How would that make a difference? So in other words, you're not telling them exactly what to do, but you're getting at the foundation thing of what that character is concerned about.
And that's the key right there, the foundation meaning inside their thoughts,
Yes,
their hearts.
yes.
What are they pursuing? What is their intent?
Yes,
what is their
yes,
objective?
yes.
What is their plan at that moment to reach that objective? And so the bad acting is representational acting.
Yes.
I can imagine in my mind they might look like this, so I'm going to look like I imagine in my mind.
And even sometimes you mentioned the Ron Howard thing, the praising him, that can backfire. He says, the part that you did right there was really good. Then the actors will imitate that again.
Right.
And rather than you say, no, don't forget about all that, just do this again.
Okay, we need to move on. Matter of fact, it's 2 minutes until 2 now, so I think we need to decide about our next meeting.
Let's say no more questions. Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I've been waiting to hear the new name.
Let's hear from Doug.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Hi, Doug. How are you?
Your movie.
Yeah, the studio.
Doug said you're gonna come up with a new name for the studio, or?
Subdivision.
Well, I'm thinking of, I'm gonna tell you the same name with 3 different endings to it. I presented a bunch of names to a bunch of people, and they seem to like this name best. Okay, so we got Silver Flame Films, or Silver Flame Entertainment, or Silver Flame Pictures. And the Silver Flame has a cool 1 10-minute speed, silver metallic logo image. What do you guys think about that? Silver Flame Film, Silver Flame Pictures, Silver Flame Entertainment.
I like entertainment, personally.
Entertainment is probably the more current day approach because it might not be necessarily films.
But you want to focus.
Pictures. Paramount Pictures is a last century kind of thing. So entertainment. I would say pictures from me personally, but the current day would be entertainment.
I think entertainment rolls off the tongue easier.
What was the genesis of where did you come up with Silver Flame? That's interesting.
I came up with like 20 of them, I don't know. Anything that sounded kind of interesting. And then I presented to a lot of people and it was a whirl. But I just didn't know what ending.
Well, I'm curious, is it for the rental of the studio or is it for development of projects?
Development of projects.
Okay, so that would be, yeah. 'cause
So it's
that'd
not a
be
name for the
different-
studio, it's a name for the production company.
Yeah, so it'd be more, so that entertainment would probably be more likely because then it's because you're developing, whereas if you're just renting the studio, it'd be Silver Flame Studios, you know.
Right.
But being that you're developing stuff, entertainment would probably be and it's not just films,
It allows you.
allows it to be more versatile.
Summer Flame Studios, actually, the S&S is good.
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean, it could be, there's the JK Studios where they're not really a studio, but they go by JK Studios.
Why do they? What's the meaning of JK?
JK is just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I know they're struggling from what I understand. I don't know.
What happened to that film that they shot? They had a comedy they just shot. They used
I
our
don't
studio.
know. I don't know. I just remember I went to CBX Live like a couple of years ago when they just left and they went on their own, and I saw them all at a restaurant after CBX Live, and I knew one of them, and so I was like, "What are you guys doing?" And he's like, "Oh, we're doing JK Studios," and my first thought was, oh, so you cut the time with BYU and now you're flying on your own. Good luck. Maybe it'll be fine. Maybe it'll be. I never want to wish anybody.
No, sure.
I just was kind of worried, and then when I started watching their stuff online, I was like, I was really concerned, and because you don't have an audience clapping and laughing, behind to add to that. It's just them making funny videos. I wasn't sure if that was effective or not. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm totally wrong. So.
Okay, for our next meeting, it's been suggested perhaps we meet at Amy's,
Barn?
well, it's more than a barn. There's a beautiful, I was up there the other day, the reception center and the ballroom sort of place, and everything. And does that sound like a good idea?
Where's the location?
Saratoga Springs.
Where?
Saratoga
Oh, sure.
Springs.
Yeah.
We
I'm all
can
for
do
it.
a map.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Okay, has anybody got a calendar? What's 2 weeks from today?
1st of July.
1st of July.
Yeah.
That's like
So,
Canada's
fireworks
Victoria Day or
There's
something.
horses.
I love horses. I love horses.
So
I
July,
love
We're
horses.
on to rodeo.
I love horses.
And
They
dogs.
don't love me. Every time I get on a horse, it goes backwards. I must be doing something wrong. Put it in reverse.
Loosen up the
Reverse.
reins.
You don't know what the guy's
Facing the tail?
Huh?
Do you face the tail?
Yeah.
Well, I jump on these things and then I'll just get
See two eyes.
does that sound good, July 1st at Amy's place?
Yeah.
Somerville Equestrian. It's, there's this Redwood Road, Smiths, the new Smiths and Fat Hats. And
We'll
it's
we'll
just
send
above.
the
It's just
information
Westwood.
and
Send the map.
directions and
Yeah.
everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fairly central if you take Pioneer Crossing all the way up.
Can you get the location real quick?
Yeah, the entrance is 1023 West, 1200 North, and we enter through the Cody Creek entrance. We come in through the Empire.
Are we meeting at your place next time?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, we just voted.
Coyote Creek, there's a big sign that says Coyote Creek.
Can we ride our horse?
Formerly, it was at
Can I bring my horse?
yes. I don't know that it says.
We're just
another
gonna be
business
horsing around.
in there. And I'll run I usually run well, thank you, Robert, for the additional, ozone machines beforehand so that it does not have any allergens.
But it's a kind of a log cabin sort of interior. for-
Well, the exterior, we are redoing it. They might be taking off the tin on the front roof starting next week, but
Would you have a whiteboard that you?
I have a beautiful whiteboard, and in the back of it is a green screen.
Ooh, you don't. So I can sit there and
Yes.
do my presentation, and then I
Yes.
can be a weather person. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
I can see the story is happening in New York.
But I'm concerned you will no longer have a cap on a hot tin roof.
I have